Have you ever received a letter saying that you have to pay a higher Medicare premium? Well, here to talk with me about that is Amy Shepard from Sensible Money. Amy, welcome.
Hi, Bob. Thanks so much.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for in advance for walking us through how folks can maybe appeal this notice that they get from Social Security saying that they have to pay a higher Medicare premium.
Yes, you're welcome. It is a topic that comes up a lot in my line of work. So I work with retirees, and the good news is that a lot of people who receive that notice telling them that they have to pay Medicare premiums, for a lot of people, they are able to successfully appeal that and pay, lower premiums. So I will do my best to walk you through the form. It can be really intimidating. Hopefully, I can make it a little less stressful and easier for people to take advantage of. So, um, the biggest thing is that what you see on my screen here is a form called SSA-44. It You see the title Medicare Income Related Monthly Adjustment Amount. So most people have heard of something called IRMAA. IRMAA stands for Income Related Monthly Adjustment Amount, and essentially IRMAA is a surcharge. You have to pay more money for your Medicare premiums when you are subject to IRMAA. So this form takes people through appealing that extra charge. And the form itself is 8 pages, but the good news is 3 of the pages have to be filled out to file the appeal, and the other 5 pages are just instructions. So it's really not too painful if you know what to do on each page. So let's start with page 1. So that's the easiest page. So what you see on the screen here is page 1. All you have to do is enter your name, your social security number, and then there's a table on page 1 that shows you different tax filing status and different income thresholds. And then depending on, where you fall on that table, it will show you the additional charge or the IRMAA that you are, potentially required to pay for both Part B and Part D if you have Part D coverage. So the way IRMAA works is there is always a 2-year look back. So the current year is 2024, and if somebody received an IRMAA notice for their 2024 Medicare premiums, most likely it was based on their tax return from 2 years ago, which was 2022. So that's what this table is showing you. If your income from 2022 was in these ranges, then your premiums for 2024 are going to be extra, based on what you see. So, any questions so far, Bob?
Well, just two things. One is it's based on something called your modified adjusted gross income, which perhaps is different from what people might believe to be AGI or adjusted gross income or taxable income.
You are exactly right. Yes. So when you get to the page 2, it mentions modified adjusted gross income. And one of the things I thought I would walk through was a tax return. So if you look at 1040, the first page of the federal 1040 tax return, and you scroll down to the income section, modified adjusted gross income, believe it or not, is a fairly simple math calculation. So what you have to do is you go to line 11, shows you your adjusted gross income. Well, you take that number from line 11 and you add it to what is in box 2A, which is tax exempt interest. Um, in my experience, the vast majority of people don't have anything in the tax exempt interest box, but plenty of people do. So that is if you have typically municipal bond income, the interest from that goes in box 2A. So nothing to get too worried about. You look at your tax return, you look at line 11, you look at box 2A, you add the numbers together. That's what gets you your modified adjusted gross income for Medicare purposes.
Great. Not as scary as it sounded.
No, but there are so many acronyms. So when you're going through a lot of them, IRMAA, MAGI, all these things at once, it can feel overwhelming. It's like another language a little bit. So back to the IRMAA appeal form. So step 1 is you have to select your life-changing event. So basically what Medicare says is, hey, we recognize that we are basing your current year premiums on your income tax situation from 2 years ago. And for a lot of people, things can change in that time. And so they say the first step is if you have had one of these life-changing events that has resulted in your income being less than what it was 2 years ago, you can fill out this form and we'll reconsider the cost of your monthly Medicare premiums. We'll reconsider that IRMAA amount we think you should pay. So the key is there's 8 life-changing events and you can only pick one. Sometimes there are situations when more than one might apply. So, for example, one of the options is death of a spouse. Well, you can have that happen, and as a result of your spouse passing away, that may also mean a loss of pension income. So I always recommend just picking the life-changing event that is the easiest for you to supply some sort of proof showing the reduction in income. In my line of work, what I come across with most frequently is retirement. So work stoppage is what they refer to as, retirement. So whatever the case is for you, you pick the box that applies. In our example, we're going to go with the idea of work stoppage. So if you retired, you select work stoppage, and then you enter the date that you retired. That's pretty straightforward. That's step one. Step two is they want you to provide some more detail on that reduction of income. And so this part can get a little bit confusing because, as I mentioned, there's only 3 pages you have to fill out and then 5 pages of instructions. Well, if you go to the instructions for step 2 and you try to read through it, it's hard to comprehend. Honestly, it makes it more confusing for me, at least, to try to read the instructions. The best way to fill out step 2 is just not to overcomplicate it and think about your situation. If you retired, what step 2 is asking you is, what year will your income change due to your retirement? So if Social Security and Medicare are looking at your tax return from 2022 and you just retired this year in 2024, that's what you fill in here. You fill in 2024. If you retired last year in 2023, you could put 2023. So you pick the year where it's going to reflect your new lower income. And then you have to enter in what we just looked at on the tax return. So what's tricky here is you have to guess because most of the time you're not going to know exactly what your AGI is going to be until you follow that new tax return. Which, if you're filling out this appeal form, you likely haven't done your tax return for the most recent year available. So in this box, you enter in what you think your adjusted gross income is going to be, and then you also enter in what you think your tax exempt interest is going to be. A critical point here is that you don't want to lowball it. You really do want to have a reasonable assumption, because if you say that it's too low, say for example you put here 2024, you think your income is going to be 50,000. Well, then you actually file your 2024 tax returns later on, and your income, your adjusted gross income, is 100,000. Social Security and Medicare, they do audits, and so if you told them one number and then it ends up being a different number that might subject you to IRMAA, they'll come back and say, hey, that wasn't right. You actually do have to pay these premiums. So can be tricky to try to figure out an estimate, but that's what you do here. Enter the year and then your income and tax exempt estimates, and then what your tax filing status will be. So any questions on step 2, Bob?
Yeah, just one quick question. For many folks who are retiring, they might get a severance package, which could put them into a situation where they owe IRMAA. But obviously, in a case where they're sort of saying, I'm retiring and my income will be dramatically lower from what it was given the severance package, any thoughts about what people should do? Is there a place to make some notes to the to Social Security, Medicare about these extraordinary circumstances?
Yeah, that's a really great one to ask about. So up on step one, there actually is an option. Other you can pick work stoppage if you retire. You can also pick employer settlement payment and write a note. You can, if you print out this form and you can handwrite a note, you could do it electronically too, I suppose, but you can pick employer settlement payment and then just type in the details that you did have a severance in that last year of work. And obviously, you can explain that severance was a one-time income event. So then you can supply the paperwork that outlines the details of your severance to show that that was a one-time, lump sum event.
Great.
Yeah, great question.
So on to the next step.
On to the next step. So, step three is one that most often can be skipped. It doesn't say optional. It says, it asks you if your modified adjusted gross income is going to be lower in the year after the year you put in step two. So, for simplicity, in most cases that I come across, if somebody receives an IRMAA notice, they fill out step two based on, what their present situation is, and then that's it. If the following year, so in the example of where we're at now, we're in 2024. Well, next year is 2025, and 2025 Medicare premiums are based on the 2023 tax return. Well, if your income in 2023 causes you to trigger an IRMAA notice in 2025, you can just come back and fill out this form again. You can, if you wanted to, fill out step two and three. And so you could fill out step two to say, for example, hey, my 2024 income is going to look like this. And then you can fill out step three that says my 2025 income is expected to be even lower than my 2024. That is an option. It tends to overcomplicate things. So I just say try to take it 1 year at a time for simplicity. Any thoughts or questions there, Bob?
No, it does seem like some people would need help as they're going through this process. It's not necessarily something that is intuitive, perhaps.
Yeah, the form itself, you look at it and you say, okay, 3 pages and only a few boxes to fill in. Not too bad. But then yeah, you sit down and you're like, well, how am I supposed to estimate my adjusted gross income? And how do I know what year am I supposed to pick? And do I do 2 years or do I just do 1 year? So I think it can be really helpful if somebody has a financial advisor to work with. We help people with this stuff all the time because we're always modeling what we expect their income to look like. So it definitely can be something that most people have lots of questions with.
Yeah. Next step.
So step four is documentation. Again, later on in this 8-page document, there is details on documentation. We talked earlier about a severance package. If you got a severance package with a lump sum payout, usually there's documentation, whether it's the pay stub showing the severance or a letter from your employer stating, your severance package. The part where it can be a little bit more complicated is just a more traditional retirement where you didn't get a severance package. You just decided, hey, I'm done working. This is going to be my last day. There's not necessarily documentation there. Usually, what happens is you retire, and then that reduction in income is captured when you file your next tax return. So it's something that's going to happen in the future. Well, what Social Security and Medicare ask for is a signed letter from your employer stating that you have retired. That is one option. Um, Another option that Social Security and Medicare will accept, in absence of any documentation, is a signed statement. So, simple as typing up a Word document and saying, I have retired as of this date. As a result of my retirement, my income in 2024 is going to be less than what it shows on my 2022 tax return. You sign that form, and in the instructions it does explain if you do something like that, you are submitting that form under penalty of perjury. So that is some good news, I think, for most people, is it's maybe you can't go back to your employer and ask for them to write a letter about your retirement, or maybe you don't want to. It is as simple as just basically creating an attestation form saying that you are telling the truth, and that is the reason for your appeal. So a lot of times with retirees, that is what I see happen, is that they just write up a simple few sentences and they submit that form, or that document along with this form. Step 5 is easy. So you've done all the hard work of getting all the income estimates, putting together any documentation or writing an attestation form. And then step 5, you sign. You add in your contact information, and then you're done with the form. And so then the next step is actually turning it in. So in my experience, if you want the quickest resolution, taking this form and all the paperwork into your local Social Security office can be the quickest way to get this addressed. So if you bring it in, you'll sit down with somebody, they'll read through the form, they might ask you some questions, but often if it's a pretty straightforward situation like retirement, they can actually give you an immediate answer. They can get into their system, update things, and you can walk out knowing it's been taken care of. The other option is you can print out the complete pages 1 through 3. You can print out any of the supplemental documentation you have, and you can mail that to your local Social Security office. Obviously, if you do something like that, you don't know when it's going to get received. So a couple things I recommend there is first to make a copy of everything you put in the envelope. So make a copy of what you're sending, and then you want to spend, a little bit of extra money to have a delivery confirmation, so you know exactly when it was received by the Social Security office. When you mail it in, it's not an immediate response. So, typically it can take 30 or 60 days to hear back. You usually get a letter in the mail explaining, if your appeal was accepted or denied. So it is really up to you on if it's something you want addressed, right away. Going in and making the visit in person will help. If you don't mind waiting, you can mail it. Some good news is if you do mail it and your appeal is approved, and you've been paying the higher Medicare premiums while you've been waiting, they will reimburse you if the appeal was approved and you're approved for lower Medicare premiums. If you've paid a couple months at a higher level, you will get that money back.
So let's, for sake of argument, say someone's still overwhelmed even after watching this video and reading the article about filling this form out. Can they walk into a Social Security office, schedule an appointment with the blank 3 pages, and get some help to fill it out right then and there?
They absolutely can. Yes, it is. It can be overwhelming, and you're talking about, Medicare, Social Security, taxes, all things that, a lot of people, admittedly, are not super comfortable with. So, yes, if you go through this form, if you watch this video and you say, Amy, my head is still spinning. Thanks for trying, but I just need help. Yes, they can go right into Social Security and sit down with somebody, and they'll handhold them through the process.
Yeah. And then two other questions, Amy. One is in cases where someone is looking to have to appeal, it's quite possible that their Medicare Part P premium will be lowered from one threshold to another threshold, but maybe not all the way back down to where the standard premium is.
That is a great point. Yes. So there are several different IRMAA thresholds. And so maybe you get a notice saying that you're going to have to pay the top, the biggest IRMAA premium, but you file an appeal, you say your income is lower, and maybe that knocks you down. So instead of paying the most, you pay somewhere in the middle. You still might not be subject to the lowest Medicare premiums, but you can appeal just to get, knocked down to a lower level, essentially.
Right. And then in cases where someone's appeal is denied, there is one more step that someone can take to appeal the denial.
They can. Yeah, fortunately, in my experience, every time I've had somebody file an appeal, it has been in cases of retirement, and so I have never had anybody have to appeal the appeal. But yes, there is a process. You can call, you can ask to speak to a supervisor, so it's not like a one and done thing. You have the ability to kind of argue against it, maybe provide some more information, or maybe just talk to somebody else who sees your situation differently than the first person did.
All right, Amy, you've made what seems to be like a complicated process easy and simple and to understand. So thank you. Anything we missed or anything that just bears reemphasizing?
I don't think so. Thanks for spending the time with me, Bob. I appreciate it.